Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunday in the House, where you're going to find a triple dose of the truth and hope and courage. I'm Dwight, Moody, your host, this Sunday and every Sunday, as we take a look at red letter religion and how it is an appropriate response to what we call MAGA religion. That is, with their fake Messiah. And we're going to look at a red letter lesson this morning, again from the Gospel of Matthew. That's going to come a little later in the show today. But I want to thank you for all of your contacts with me this week. Last week, you remember, we were celebrating my birthday, and we had a wonderful response. We've had a great response this week. I've heard from people from Louisiana, Florida, Texas, New Jersey, Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee. That's just part of it. And on top of this, as you've been following us, I've been encouraging people to become a donor. My goal is to have 75 donors by the end of, I don't know when. I started this 5 years ago. But we're up to 63, and you can be number 64. You can give, go to themeetinghouse.net/support, and you'll have directions about how you could become a donor as well. All over the country, there were public protests. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I went to one yesterday. I'm going to show you some pictures. And of course, if you're a basketball fan like I am, like millions of people are, it's been an incredible weekend. This afternoon at 3 o'clock, I think, our state team, South Carolina, plays for the national championship in the women's bracket against Connecticut, two of the dominant teams over the last decade. And then tomorrow night, Florida plays Houston. I stayed up last night and watched that Houston-Duke game. My, one of the greatest college basketball games I've ever seen. What a dramatic finish. Maybe some of you stayed up and watched it. Basketball at its best. And then tomorrow, the 7th of April, is the 5th anniversary of the death from COVID of the great singer-songwriter John Prine. Most of you know I'm a great fan of John Prine. I had never heard of him when he died. It was only 2 months later. I'll tell that story maybe in June. But I celebrate his life and his influence, and thankful that it came my way. And then, of course, all the storms. It was raining here a little bit earlier here in South Carolina. They say that all of the rain and flooding that struck Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi over the weekend, yesterday, terrible flooding in Kentucky, is also coming our way right here in upstate South Carolina. So a lot going on. In the midst of all this, you remember I've encouraged all of us to do 5 things as a pushback to what the administration is doing. That is to march, to boycott, to strike. We're not at the strike point yet. To vote. There was voting this week of consequence. And then to pray. And these are the 5 things that we need to be doing on a regular basis. And yesterday I went to my second political protest. Now, I grew up, I was a little boy and a teenager during the Civil Rights Movement. Nobody around me, least of all the white church I was in West Kentucky, was interested in the Civil Rights Movement. No, they didn't preach about it. They didn't teach about it. We certainly didn't organize to support it, not by a long shot. But here I am at the 50, 60 years later, and I have, for the second time, taken my sign. You see my sign back here behind me. And we went up to Hendersonville, North Carolina again, a trip of about 30 miles. Greenville did not have a protest yesterday because there had already been a large public event scheduled for downtown Greenville. and so we could not preempt that, rightly so. But we went up to Hendersonville. There was 1,000 people, which was more than double what it was just a few weeks ago. And there was, of course, music and signs galore. I had my sign, and it drew a lot of attention. People like it. Less Trump and more Jesus. It's a great sign. You can make a sign like that. I hope you have a sign. I hope you go to a protest. I'm going to talk more about that next week, about my street corner protest. But I hope you were somewhere yesterday protesting the subversion of civil liberties in the United States. I talked last week about the scholar in Boston, legal, documented scholar that was suddenly arrested by 6 men dressed in black with masks on their face, the most ungodly thing I think I've ever seen in the United States. Well, that's probably not quite true, but it's terrible how the administration has thrown away the constitutional right to due process. Anyway, I was there. You find a place where you can protest, find a corner where you can show your sign to be in solidarity with the people whose civil rights are being abused. Now, this is what I want to say about my ministry on Sunday morning. I am pushing back against MAGA religion. It is a distortion, I think, of Christianity. It has elevated our president to messianic status and has suppressed all resistance or pushback from his inner circles. I have been so embarrassed by so many people in high places who have refused to defend the rights of Americans in the current situation. But here is, I not only fear the loss of our democracy. I mean, Trump is already talking about running for a 3rd term. He knows that's unconstitutional. His people know it. He's still talking about it. He wants to do it. We're going to have to fight to make sure it doesn't happen. So I do have concern about our democracy. But as a minister, a preacher, and a theologian, I have even more concern about the distortion of our Christian faith, about how Christianity has been used to endorse and support all the ugly things that have happened over these first 2 months. I want to point out this. In the MAGA movement, I've read a lot of their material, both on the scholarly side and on the popular side. And this is what is unusual about it. In their presentation of what they believe and their defense of what they're promoting, they quote the Bible a lot. They quote Christianity. They invoke Christianity. But the one thing that they leave out again and again and again and again is Jesus. They rarely invoke the name, the teaching, the deeds of Jesus himself. Now we know the reason for that is that there's very little in the teaching of Jesus that supports what this administration is doing, what the MAGA movement is doing. You have heard my MAGA creed: help the rich and hurt the poor, welcome the white but deport the brown, bless the strong, ignore the weak, believe the lie, suppress the truth. That's the MAGA creed. There's hardly anything in the teaching of Jesus, in the life of Jesus, in the gospel accounts that supports any of that. This is why they cannot quote Jesus. This is why I am doing, week by week, these red letter lessons in the life and teaching of Jesus. There's one exception to what I've just said. Sometimes they do invoke Jesus, but the Jesus they invoke is the resurrected Jesus, the exalted Jesus, the Jesus who's running the kingdom, because that is an image of Jesus as a person of great power and authority, and his word goes. That's what they think. So that's the Jesus that they invoke. There's very, very little in the Bible about that Jesus. Jesus did not talk very much about that Jesus. Now, I'm going to tell a story here in a minute about it. But the MAGA religion never invokes the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount. They do not invoke the parables, the teachings, how Jesus had compassion on the poor. As a matter of fact, Jesus, you remember when he summarized his own ministry, when he went into his home synagogue in Nazareth. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. That's the very first summary sentence of Jesus, quoting the prophet Isaiah. Nothing that has happened in these first 2 months has been good news for the poor. I'll guarantee that. It's made a lot of people much poorer, including, by the way, Elon Musk. Well, the best response of this is for us to focus on the red letter Jesus. Now, you've heard me talk about this. I brought my little red letter Bible with me today. I've been reading it. And you know, as I explained last week, there are two big sermons in the Gospel of Matthew. The Sermon on the Mount at the beginning of the Gospel, and the prophetic sermon at the end of the Gospel. Both of these have primarily to do with how we are to live today. But that prophetic sermon, we call it, is broken down into 4 parts, and I want to go through them with you. Part 1 is about the signs of the times in which everybody lives all the times. Jesus described the way life is on planet Earth. And then in part 2, he described a time that is coming, a time of great crisis and danger to Israel and Jerusalem. And as a matter of fact, he predicted the destruction of Jerusalem. And that happened about 30, 40 years later, 66 to 70 AD, when the armies under Vespasian came in, Roman armies, and put down the rebellion, destroyed Jerusalem, went down to Masada. I wish I could stop and tell the story of Masada. I was at Masada once, well, many times. I rode my Vespa bike down there, parked at the hostel, and I was going to walk all the way around Masada by myself. That was the first stupid thing. I got halfway and couldn't go any further. I thought I was going to die in the deep ravine that separates the plateau from the Masada mountain. I'll tell that story more in full because I had a prayer that day, a talk with God. Anyway, the third part of this sermon, Jesus meshes or moves smoothly from the drama of the downfall of Jerusalem into the mystery of the day of the Lord. This is an old prophetic, literary, and homiletic move. That is, we don't know what's happening after the destruction of the nation. But it's going to be a time when God appears and does something great for us, the coming of the Lord. The fourth section of that sermon, which comprises the whole 26th chapter, is 3 stories, 3 parables, and the last one is very familiar. It's the way the sermon ends. Now, you know, I have taught preaching for a number of years. I've been involved in mentoring young preachers, and in fact, I wrote a little book called The 9 Marks of a Good Sermon. And one of those 9 marks is that a preacher makes an appeal. And the appeal to Jesus' appeal in this sermon, he drives home in these 3 stories, especially the third story. You know the story. all the nations of the earth gathered on the judgment day. And the Lord says, some of you are blessed, you come over here. Some of you are cursed and over here. And the people said, well, why are we blessed? And Jesus said this, because I was hungry. You gave me something to eat. I was naked. You gave me some clothes. I was thirsty. You gave me something to drink. I was a stranger. You took me in. I was sick and you healed me. I was in prison. You came to see me. And the blessed people said, well, when did we ever do that? And Jesus said, well, anytime you did it to the least person, the homeless, the stranger, the undocumented, the criminal, the outcast, the weak, the brown. Anytime you did any of these things or similar things to those people, you've done it to me. This is what we mean by the appeal that Jesus made. That is, when Jesus was talking in some sense about the future of Jerusalem, he wanted to focus everybody's attention on the present. That is, how are we to live now? Now, there are a lot of people who spend a lot of their ministerial energy and money dreaming and speculating about the future. Jesus was never there. Jesus' teaching to you and to me is how are we going to live today and tomorrow. That's what the teaching of Jesus is about, not to speculate about what might happen and when and all that sort of thing. I grew up and had my training and education during a time when there was great fascination with the end of the world and the Battle of Armageddon and the coming of Jesus. One minister who just died last year wrote a book called The Terminal Generation. What he meant was that the people who were alive in 1972, 1980, they were going to be the last generation, the terminal generation. He was a false prophet. Now, I'm going to read this to you now. Listen to this. This is Matthew 20:24. Many will come in my name saying, I am a Messiah, and will deceive many. Take heed that no one deceives you. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. We do, don't we? See that that does not trouble you. For these things must happen, but this is not the end. Nation rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There'll be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in different places. This is just the beginning. Now, sometimes ministers read this and they'll say these are signs of the end times. No, these are signs of every time, every age, every continent. This is just the beginning, Jesus said. They will deliver you up to be afflicted. They will kill you. You will be hated. This is true of many religions. There's a great deal of religious persecution around the world today. Many will be offended, and they will betray one another and shall hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and deceive many. But those that endure to the end will find salvation. These are signs of every time, not the end time. They are signs of every culture, every community, every continent. Jesus gave us these 6 things: clothe the naked, give water to the thirsty, heal the sick, visit those who are imprisoned. One of these days I'm going to stop and talk about prisoners. The Bible has a lot to say about the imprisoned. And we, in our America, we have a great imprisoned population. We're to welcome the strangers. These are things that will build community, that will promote the common good, and that will sustain the flourishing of the human race. And this is what Jesus was interested in. How different that is than what MAGA religion and their false Messiah are teaching us and are doing. Think of all the terrible things that happened this week. The tariffs. Now, Mr. Trump wants to encourage American work and employment and the production of goods. This is a good thing. There are ways to do that, but there are no economists anywhere that think creating a tariff war is going to take us there. All of these residents of the United States were gathered up at night and taken down to El Salvador. They've already admitted they made mistakes, and now they're saying they can't bring them back. That is a lie. They can bring them back. They will bring them back. And then the stock market. I had a friend of mine tell me yesterday that 25% of their retirement 401k tanked. Here's an interesting thing. Do you realize there's a great crisis in the bee world? You know how important bees are to food production all over the world? And in some places, 50, 60, and 70% of the bees are dying. Do you know who does the research into this? The National Institutes of Health and the National Department of Agriculture. Do you know who has decimated these departments, these researchers? Do you know who has canceled billions of dollars of this kind of research? The new president must think that this kind of work is superfluous to the flourishing of the human race. Who's going to do this research into the bee population and to try to address it if it's not done at the U.S. Department of Agriculture? This is another way in which the ugly dismissal of so many thousands of civil servants is going to hurt the United States. And then, of course, there's the story about the 400 books that were removed from the U.S. Naval Academy, including the book White Too Long, written by a Mississippi man now living in D.C., Robert P. Jones. I've interviewed him twice in the Meeting House, one of the most influential Christian scholars in the United States, writing about our racist past. Part of MAGA religion's effort to suppress what we call DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do you realize that this effort is the third time in our history when an opportunity to repent and change our ways as a nation has come to us and we've rejected it? After the Civil War with Reconstruction, when we wanted to give black people, freed slaves, a fresh opportunity to flourish, the white people in the South undermined it, put it down, put segregation and Jim Crow laws and lynching in its place, refusing to repent. And then, 80 years later, with the Civil Rights Movement, the great preacher Martin Luther King raised our consciousness and led a great movement to open up voting and open up schools and open up water fountains and streets and employment to people of all colors. And you know who pushed back against it? White Southern Christians, MAGA religion people. And this whole MAGA movement started right there. And here we are for the third time after the George Floyd death. And we started these programs to try to address our long-running racism. And now the whole MAGA movement and the president trying to suppress all of that and say, no, white people. We want white people to run things. White Christian men specifically. It's a great tragedy. But I want to finish today not with these ugly episodes of racism and the failure to repent. I want to end up with two great stories of courage. The whole country has been slapped in the face, caught napping, and we didn't know how to respond to all the ugly stuff that was being pushed upon us. People getting fired, people getting deported, ICE agents coming into churches and schools and places of work and taking people at night. It's an ugly thing. Tariffs all over. But one of the great things that, as a result, happened this week when a United States Senator, Cory Booker of New Jersey, took the microphone in the Senate and began to speak. He did, for 25 hours and 5 minutes, what I have been doing maybe for 25 minutes. I don't see how he did it. Live streamed it on TikTok. Now, I'm on TikTok. I did not see it on TikTok, but it got 350 million views on TikTok. I can tell you that's a lot. That's almost equal to the entire population of the United States. And of course, that's a worldwide phenomenon. Cory Booker, he took to the podium, made a strong case, pushback against all that is happening, the longest in history. And I want to say, my response to him is, this took courage. And I want to thank you, Senator. It took boldness. He was willing to do something bold. That is, he is a leader. And you know what people are saying? It's made him already the premier leader in the Democrat Party and maybe even a candidate for higher office, the White House himself. I don't know. I want to thank you, Mr. Booker, for the courage, the wisdom, the skill to speak your piece, to push back against all the ugliness. But then this, a little closer to home. This week, my son, who's actually with me here in the studio right now, my son Alan and I took off and went up to a place we're familiar with called the Community of Peace. It's a Christian living community outside of Louisa, Virginia, which is halfway between Charlotte and Richmond. We were there for several days and did some work and cooked some meals. But the discussion around the table was about the public demonstration that was scheduled for Louisa, small little community of less than 2,000 people, right in the middle of Trump country. They had scheduled one of those hands-off gatherings yesterday, Saturday, and we had a discussion around the table several times. The director, Brother Stefan Walliger, he wanted to go. He is the founder of the community. He's the spiritual leader. He leads in prayer 3 times a day. He also feeds the chickens every morning. I made a video about that and put it up on TikTok. It's part of their routine. But he talked to me personally, and we talked as a group. Should he go? Would he be safe? Would it hurt their ministry? Would it turn the community against them? Would anybody else show up? I encouraged him to go. I told him we were going to go up to Hendersonville here in our place. I encouraged him to go and then to tell me how it went. Well, he texted me last night. He sent me a message. Let's see if I can find it. I asked him how it was. This was 10:30 last night. The ball game was still going on. This is what he said. Yes, it was a very positive experience. They had 200 people there, equal to 10% of the population. Actually inspiring, no violence. Very glad I was there. I was asked to speak at the next one. I commend you, Brother Stefan, for taking a stand. I commend all of you for taking a stand. And as I wrap up my show today, this broadcast, this message, this gospel talk, this red letter lesson, I want to encourage you to make a sign, find a corner to stand on, join a protest, boycott stores that are not supporting the people. I want to let me know that you're watching. Post on Facebook or on YouTube. Send me a note. Call me. Write me a letter. Ask a question. I'll try to answer it. Send a donation. You can be donor number 64 or 65 or 66. You could be donor number 75. I should send you something if you're donor number 75. Share this on your Facebook. Invite somebody to join you next Sunday on Sunday in the House. You know you can watch this anytime during the week on YouTube and on my website, themeetinghouse.net. I'm Dwight Moody. This has been Sunday in the House. I hope you have a great day. I hope you can survive the water and the storms. Pray for one another, help one another, be a red letter Christian, and live with courage and hope and truth. God bless you all.